Hey, everybody, welcome back to Practical Liberty. You know me, I'm Henry Bingaman, and you know my business partner now, Nick Watts. Nick, how you doing, man?
Doing really well. Glad to be with you.
Yeah, so this is the kind of business and culture side of the Practical Liberty show. So we had a bunch of things that we wanted to kind of bring up today. Um, I have a little more business experience than you. So one of the things we're going to do is have you kind of pick my brain live on camera. This is kind of what we do in our biweekly meetings anyway, when we're talking about the products and all that. So we figured it'd be fun to just record it and put it out there to see if it's useful to anybody else. So one of the things I think you wanted to bring up was, all right, so first of all, one of the best books on marketing ever written is Breakthrough Advertising by Gene Schwartz. This is a $150 book or $125 book. You can only get it from my friend Brian Kurtz, who's a previous guest on the podcast. He bought the exclusive rights from Gene Schwartz's widow. So, and she demands a very high cut because she was married to one of the best marketers of all time. So he has a couple concepts in there. And I know you're aware of the overview of the book, but I don't think you've dived into the details. Is that right?
Yeah. So part of how I first came across you, Henry, was I was going down the rabbit hole of trying to learn a bit of sales, marketing, copywriting stuff because I had in mind that I was going to do a product solo. And I thought I need to learn how to market it. And so part of going down that rabbit hole was starting to see some other people who are kind of downstream from Eugene Schwartz. So they've all read this and they're trying to explain those same concepts, but in their own unique way. And so I was starting to get a bit familiar with it and eventually discovered this book exists. I went $150. How good is it really? Do I really want to shell out for that? Because I'm just I'm a cheapskate. I have Scottish ancestry, let's be honest. And I didn't want to spend that without knowing that it was going to teach me what I wanted to know. But hey, I'm going to pick your brain about it now and we'll see if you'll probably persuade me by the end that I probably should read it.
Well, I got very lucky. My first copy of Breakthrough Advertising as a Christmas gift in like 2008 when it only cost like $79. So I have the early, I'm in early.
Grandfathered in.
Exactly.
Yeah. So one of the books I've been reading is called The SaaS Playbook by Rob Walling. I do recommend that for anyone who's interested in starting a software startup. But some of those concepts that I think trace back to Breakthrough Advertising show up in his stuff about marketing a software product. And so I wanted to ask you some really newbie basic questions about the concepts in here, and we'll see where the conversation goes.
Yeah, let's do it.
So first thing, I gather it's built around like levels of awareness and sophistication. So maybe it's best first for context if you just give the listeners a quick overview of what are the basic levels of awareness and sophistication.
Yeah, so it's actually, I would say there's three main concepts in the book that you should be aware of. The first is called mass desire, and everything in marketing is built around mass desire. And the way Gene Schwartz talks about it is that you can't create desire, you can only direct it. So, right, we all have these innate desires that we want to go after. And in cultures kind of tend to form desires in certain directions. So at certain periods in time, people collectivize around the idea, whatever the culture is, it shifts people into wanting a certain thing. So you can harness that, you can redirect it, but you can't create the desire for your product. So then there's two other concepts after that. The first one he calls the states of awareness, and the second one he calls the stages of sophistication. So a state of awareness is, and I actually pulled up my notes on this. So how aware is the prospect of his desire? Does he know what he wants at all? Does he even understand that there's a desire there? How close to the surface of his consciousness is that? Is he aware that there's a product that can satisfy that desire? So does he know that like there's something out there that can solve it? Does he know your product in particular? And then does he have any idea of what it costs? So those are kind of the questions you ask. So the states of awareness, the most aware person, he knows your product, he knows what it does, and he's like ready to buy. So that's obviously, if somebody's in that state of awareness, that's the best person, that's the best prospect for you. They already know the desire, it's already there. The second one is he knows your product, but he doesn't want to buy it yet. And this is like where most consumer products are, is like, you've heard of it. There's a Keurig coffee machine, right? There's some type of lamp. Everybody knows some consumer product. You know it, but you don't know if you want it yet. The third state is it's a new product. So there's a desire there, but there's not a product yet that he knows that he should be going after. So it's kind of an interesting middle ground one to go after. So, and that's where most companies start, right? Every company starts with a new product. So most people will start in the third state of awareness. The fourth state is that there's a product that solves a need. So he's aware of his need, but not that there is even a potential product out there. And then the fifth one is he's not even aware of his need. He's not even aware of his desire. It's under there, but he can't articulate it. There's obviously then, if he doesn't know that there's a desire, he doesn't know that there's a product. So do all five of those like states of awareness make sense?
Yeah, I think so. I have follow-up questions, but we'll get to that.
All right. And then the stage of sophistication is just like, how many other products have they seen in that market? Right. So if they've never seen any other product in that market that solves their desire, you just have to tell them what you have. Right. So it's like coming out with the first automobile. You just have to say, hey, I have a car. Right. This thing will drive you. It's like a horse, but it's like a horseless carriage. Right. So you can just say what it is. And then it goes on down the list of like basically more and more aware of.
So yeah, they're aware of what their options are.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's basically different ways of marketing to people in those different stages of sophistication. So the first one, you just say, here's what I have. The second one, you just have to kind of amp up the claims. So it's like, oh, I have a car, but with more horsepower. The third one, you have to give it kind of a new mechanism. So it's like, my car uses, I don't know, gasoline that's 10 times cleaner, or you can run this on corn fuel or something like that. So it's a new mechanism for the same product. The fourth stage, you have to like really amp up both the claim and the mechanism. So I have the, triple deluxe turbo corn engine versus, and that can go 100 miles an hour versus the last one. So you're really like ramping up the claims and the mechanism. And then the biggest one is when there's so much competition out there, you can't actually sell really the features or the mechanics. You have to kind of speak to their identity. So this is like in the cigarette world, one of the big examples is, I'm a Marlboro man. It has nothing to do with the taste of the cigarettes, the quality, any of that. It was just, this is who I am. Like, I'm a person that smokes Marlboros. I'm a cowboy, that kind of thing. So those are the stages of sophistication.
Yeah. And that makes sense, right? Because cigarettes, they're so simple, pretty much, except for the fact that it might be illegal to grow or something. Like, anyone could grow a tobacco plant and make cigarettes. It's, such an easy thing. So to get the market, you've really got to speak to people at that core identity kind of level.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and I remember, so I've written in the financial publishing industry for many, many years. Back in 2009, nobody was selling any newsletters anymore. It was just, nobody wanted to invest. It was the middle of the recession. Everybody was like worried about the Obama going to tank the economy. The stock market's never to come back. But there was a big breakthrough promo, and it was called The End of America. And it was really just, so it was a fear-based promo. It sold $100 million at a time where like nobody could break $1 million on their sales. And it wasn't just about the fear. It was about, I'm the type of person that can see this coming. Like, there weren't investment opportunities. There weren't anything. He really sold to I'm the anti-Obama, anti what the liberals are doing to the country type of person. And it sold so much product. So that's really tapping into the identity.
Yeah. So I'm hearing echoes of like the Doug Casey's and the Peter Schiffs and this kind of thing. It's the end. The big crash is coming, and you're the kind of person like me who can see it, who can see the future.
Yeah, my mentor Mark Ford was talking about Porter Stansberry, who wrote that big End of America, or he was the voice behind it. And he told me that Porter has correctly predicted 17 out of the last 2 recessions.
Yeah, I've heard Rick Rule say that about himself as well. I predicted 17 of the last 3 or something like that. So is that Porter Stansberry? Would he be then the name that is behind Stansberry Research today?
Yep. Yeah, that was the promo that really had that company take off. I mean, it was they had been doing well.
There you go. I've watched their YouTube channel now.
Yeah. So you had some follow-up questions on the states of awareness.
Yeah. So states of awareness. If you're going to market a product, do you want to pick a state of awareness and target like an avatar? We might need to explain what that is. Target an avatar who's at that state of awareness, or do you want to have some messaging directed to each state of awareness, so that you pick people up and move them through those stages till they're in the final stage, super, super ready to buy? Are you trying to target a specific one, or are you trying to catch them all and move people through them?
This is kind of why you start with the mass desire. You have to go in what state of awareness, because there's going to be people in all those groups. There might be one person in the most aware state, and then 10 million people in the middle of the pack, right? So you want to catch the biggest group that has the hardest or the biggest desire, basically. So you can start picking off go for that one person, but I'm not going to spend 2 weeks writing a sales page to get one sale, where I will spend a month, 2 months really honing a message for that group of 10 million people. So if everybody's in the third state of awareness where they know their desire, they really wish there was something, or this is second state, they really wish there was something out there, and you can come out there, that's who I'm going to target. I'm not going to go for the super sophisticated, try and target their identity. I'm going to go, hey, here's what we got. This is new. This is great. This is what it does. Buy it. But I'm not going to go for the hard end tails. Now you might have two messages, right? If there's people in states 2 and 3, then you might target different messages to them. But again, you want to go after one at a time, and you want to get one segment working before you try to target everybody.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that's helpful. So you pick one, focus on it, dial it in. When you're pretty sure you've got that well dialed in, maybe then you expand to a different one that's, your next tier that's got the next most people or something.
And these are kind of overlapping categories, right? It's a good framework. It's not, I wouldn't want to stick to this too dogmatically. If you're doing something in between, one message might work for two states, right? Because it overlaps enough. You can talk to both people with the same message. So that's what broadcasting is about, right? You're talking to a lot of people at the same time. Now, you mentioned the term avatar. So the avatar is basically a group of characteristics. So like when I'm writing a financial promo, I always picture my uncle, right? He's more conservative than not. He's not, he's been he's been an entrepreneur. He's run a construction company. And he's kind of, he's not, I don't think he's not college educated, but he's very smart. So it's like, that's the avatar I write to. And he's in his 60s. So he's like the perfect person for financial newsletter targeting. So I always picture him. And then I add on some other traits that I know like people in that general kind of demographic have.
Yeah. So I've written 2 books that are out there, and 3, I suppose, and a 4th that I have worked on, but ended up abandoning the project partway through for reasons I can get into later. But each time I've done the same thing. I've had a particular person in mind who's not even a made up person, but actually like a real person. It's like, I'm not going to name them, but I'm going to write this as if I expected this person I know to read it. And pictured it, where I think they're at, what they're ready to hear, what they need explained and what they don't, those kind of things.
Yeah.
And I think, for the most part, I think that has been a helpful way to approach writing a book.
It's people lose focus if they try to talk to too many people. Like writing is a weird thing because you feel it's not like public speaking. Writing is a very intimate type one-on-one thing. You're talking to a single person at a time, even though you're technically also talking to a million people. When you're on a stage, and I've done public speaking, you are addressing the crowd. When you're writing, you're addressing one particular person. So you really want to focus in, and it's going to be way more effective that way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can relate to that because, a person reading a book, they can be sitting alone in a corner. No one else knows the conversation they're having with you. But yeah, Sam, I've also done a bunch of public speaking, and it's different. Yeah. Okay. So that's so you're going to target one specific stage, and then is your primary goal to take someone who's in that stage from this is the awareness I have to now I'm ready to buy, or is the first goal to take them from that stage to the next stage?
Yeah. So no, you're not trying to take the next stage. The sales message is basically the bridge between the desire they have and your product. So you're trying to bridge that as directly as possible. So it might take 2 or 3 steps. You might have to hit them with multiple messages. Like this is the point of building an email list or a mailing list, is sometimes if they're in stage 1, they're not going to buy till stage 2 or 3. So you're communicating, you're keeping in touch until they're ready to buy from you. This is actually kind of the point of podcasts and stuff too, is you build a longer term relationship. People dig more and more into it. And then all of a sudden they're at a way different state of awareness than when they first started, maybe a year, maybe 2 years ago. I know we both know Chris Warzakowski. He said he's had email people on his list for like 18 months, 2 years before they bought anything from him. And then they can become one of his best customers. And I've heard that from a lot of different people. It's like, sometimes people aren't there yet, but they're ready to learn.
Yeah. So I'm one of those people on Chris's list I've been on there for a year, and I'm probably about to buy his book. As soon as it's available on Australian Amazon, I'll buy it. Yeah,
exactly. There's just that. And you see enough from him and you get to know him enough. And then all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I trust this person enough now. And you're at a different state, and you're at a different stage of sophistication as well.
So I'd be really curious to know at that point, because you've done a lot of freelancing. And one of the things that you've been encouraging people with on Practical Liberty is freelancing is a good way to get yourself more personal freedom and more income that in turn also gives you more personal freedom.
Yeah.
Freelancing is a great thing. I want to encourage that. So how have you, in your freelancing career, kind of used that mechanism of having an email list and keeping people getting to know you and being, warmer and warmer leads for eventually being clients. Like what kind of messages would you send out to an email list to encourage them to stay in touch with you and have you in their mind when they come to the point of wanting the services of you as a freelancer?
It's funny. I never really used an email list to dig up clients or prospect for clients. It never happened to be that way. What I did is I built a network and I kept in touch with that network. So I used email. I'd email clients things every once in a while. Every 4 or 5 months, I'd have an article that, somebody I met at a conference and I put them in my Rolodex. And then I'd be like, "Ooh, this article fits this person's business perfectly." And then I'd say, Hey, John, whatever, just thinking about you, saw this article, made me think, this might be something you'd want to try out. Anyway, best of luck. Anytime you want to talk, I'm here, Henry, and that kind of stuff. And then I almost always got hired in person. None of those emails ever worked, but like, "Oh, Henry, next time at next conference, hey, Henry, hey, come on, have dinner with us, have lunch with us." And then you'd get the job. So it's just that communication. Now, if I was starting over knowing what I know now, I would have a much more formalized process. I kind of evolved into my networking process. And now I'm well enough known that like I just went out and got a new copywriting job. Partially because I had a client go bankrupt owing me $500,000. So I needed had a little hole in my income for the next year. But when I just reached out to my network, I had 3 offers within, 2 or 3 weeks. And I just wrapped up that project. It's going to legal actually tomorrow morning. So, and it's really good. I'm actually pretty happy with it, but, I don't know. It's building that network. Once you get a reputation, it's not hard to get clients. But in the initial stages, I would have had a much more formalized follow-up process, which is actually something that's going to be part of our product. All those lessons I learned are going to go in there.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to talking about that more and implementing it. But I thought that example was really good of just, here's an article. I thought this might be useful to you. It's such a quick and easy thing to do. And yet it does actually genuinely give someone some value. And, you do have to have thought about, oh, this would actually be good for them. Like it shows them, I actually have thought about how I could help you.
Yes. And you're not in there asking for work every time. You could say, "Hey, I'm still available to talk if you ever want to work together. I think it would be cool." But it's not a hard pitch in that way. That hard sales pitch for very high end, like, we're talking $5, $10, $20,000 jobs, sometimes more. A hard sales pitch is just going to turn them off. Those clients want a relationship with you. They want to trust you. They don't want to feel like they're buying a car, right? This is a ongoing relationship, not just a one-time transaction. So the relationship building is really huge in freelancing.
Yeah, that is really helpful. So I have possibly my first, more or less my first serious freelancing client, potentially at the moment, kind of on the boil. So there's some friends of mine that are wanting to launch a SaaS. It's kind of AI related, but that's the thing. They're already good friends of mine. So there's already this relationship there, and like sort of we know and trust each other. And I think that already I can see that would make it much, much easier to just, to do constructive criticism well and have good feedback. And
absolutely. The first client I got was a business partner of my dad's that, it was the chiropractor that I'd been going to when I got hurt in wrestling in high school. So is that pre-existing relationship was the reason I got the relationship. I couldn't have gone up to him and been like, "Hey, I read these 3 books on copywriting and did 5 practice sales letters. Can I work for you?" Wouldn't have worked unless he actually knew me and trusted me. And I bombed that project, but I made it up to him by working my butt off for the next, 6 months. I worked with him to try and make up for that one sales letter. And the problem, I talk about this a few times. I might just be in the course that I talk about it. But I wrote actually what is an okay sales letter when I look back at it for where I was, but he had no traffic source. He didn't have an email list. He didn't know how to run paid ads. So it's like, who are you going to send this to? Your 75 in-house customers or 500, whatever, 300 email names he had that already were buying the products and seeing him in the office. It just didn't make sense. And I just didn't know what I didn't know. So I've learned that fast, but I made it up to him and then, still have a good relationship with that client, which is, I don't work for him anymore because he can't afford me, but I still like the guy.
Yeah, that's great. And yeah, I'll say for the record, as a younger guy, not knowing what I didn't know yet, I offered to do some jobs, some coding jobs, and I really just I didn't quite know what I was doing. I'd sort of self-taught to code. I think this was even before I'd done the uni degree and all this sort of thing. And I did some side jobs for family friends, website stuff and whatever. I look back and go, that was terrible work. And I charged them for it and they paid me, but I look back and go, I'm embarrassed by that in hindsight. I consider those bombed jobs, even though it didn't ruin the relationship. They were gracious about it. And
it's totally growing pains. It's going to happen to everybody in this industry. Your first couple projects are just not going to go that well. That's why I always like, don't work for free, but don't overcharge, and undercharge and overdeliver your first couple projects as a freelancer. You don't want the reputation of coming in. One of the big mistakes I see is these people, they'll take a course and they'll know a little bit about, programming or copywriting or something. I really see this in the copywriting world. They'll take a course, a little bit about copywriting, and then take a course on how to sell themselves. And so they'll really get good at the selling themselves part, but they're not good at the copywriting part yet. So they'll sell a client for $5,000-$10,000 using some honestly pretty deceptive techniques. But then they bomb out of the industry because they can't deliver on that value. So they'll take the $10,000, they'll write something that doesn't even get like 5 sales, and then their reputations are ruined. They're not like, everybody learns that they were a fraud. So like, don't be a fraud. There's no better way to ruin your career than like screwing over clients. It is not a sustainable way to last. Yeah.
So this is just this weird object lesson that I learned some years ago. I went into a shopping center here on the Gold Coast. And if people don't know, the Gold Coast is kind of like, in some ways, it's like Amsterdam. It's there's some pretty glitzy, but I don't know if that's a great analogy. It's the kind of place where the center of the city that's right on the beach, there's a lot of tattoos, a lot of people clearly on steroids, a lot of fake boobs. It's very plastic and glitter, and it looks like maybe something that belongs on the Vegas Strip.
Sounds like Santa Monica Beach, honestly.
Yeah, I don't know Santa Monica, but yeah, I'm sure there's equivalent places. And yeah, around that is this beautiful family-friendly city with great infrastructure and all this brilliant stuff. But right in the heart of the CBD, the suburb, oddly called Surfers Paradise, which is not where the good waves are, but that's what it's called. That's where it's really glitzy and plastic. And around there, we went into a big shopping mall, and I don't know if this is, you have these things. Normally in a shopping mall, there's a big long hallway and all the shops are on the sides, doorways to the shops on the walls. But then down the center, you have what we call pop-up shops that are just these sort of free-floating. You can approach it from any side. Little shops. Do you have that sort of thing?
Yeah, they call them kiosks or stands, something like that.
So this girl had a pop-up shop, and she was selling these nail care things. It was like a little block about this big, had 4 sides and like a different grit of sort of sandpaper stuff on each side. So you go from coarse down to fine and end up with a really shiny nail. And so I was with this guy, and I won't name him. Like I care about him, but he gets too easily starstruck by a pretty girl. So there's a pretty girl at the pop-up shop with this nail thing, and she says, "Hey," flags him down and says, "Hey, do you want to demo this nail thing?" And a pretty girl, he wants to talk to her. So he goes over there, and I'm standing there just watching him go through this process. And she shines his nail for him, goes, "Look how shiny that is! Like, you should get this for someone as a present." And she ends up talking him into it. There's some whole sales pitch about like it's made with salt from the Dead Sea or something, and fancy ingredients from here, there, and everywhere, and sells it to him $90, which I suppose is roughly like $60 for this little nail file block. And I went home later and went on eBay and found something that looked awfully similar, same colors of sandpaper and everything, $2. I thought, what are the odds that she got this for $2 off eBay or something pretty close to that? And I just thought that's deceptive selling. I thought
it depends. Did she really get the Dead Sea ingredients? Did she? I mean, there are people that will pay for the story, and I actually don't begrudge them as long as the story is not like totally falsified. Like if the difference between a Chinese knockoff version that you can get for $2 that has fake whatever cheap sand that you got at the grocery store versus this fancy one that somebody went out and spelunking by the Dead Sea and got it from the bottom of a cave that's 25,000 years. I mean, some of that stuff you pay for the story to just have it sit there. Like I have some Roman coins, which I thought are awesome. But it's like the silver in it is like, this was after Rome started devaluing the currency. So the silver is like 0.4% or whatever it is in there. But I paid like, I don't know, $2,000 or something for this really well-conditioned coin that's worth like $30 in silver, $10 in silver. But the story is it's, however many, it's from the Roman Empire, 200 AD. I mean, it's just like a cool coin. So the story sometimes is worth it. And I don't know.
I sort of get that for a collectible. I don't know. Like it's one of these things. I definitely wouldn't want it to be illegal or whatever, like, voluntarist all the way. But I sort of got the sense of that she's telling me, look how good your nail looks. And like, yeah, I'd say it's got this salt in it, but I felt that was pretty secondary to just, look, it makes your nail shiny. And that, I was sort of, the whole time I was looking at him going, I reckon you could get the same thing a lot cheaper somewhere. Yeah, I don't want to tell people what to buy. I'm sure there's, at one level, it's none of my business. And yet I think it has to be acknowledged that there are people out there who are taking you for a ride.
Yeah, well, and pretty girls will sell anything. It's one of the it was funny. Maybe 2015, we were running a lot of advertising online for like financial publishing stuff. And this doesn't make any sense at all. But the best ad we had, it was a headline about like investing in whatever. And the picture was just a rather busty woman smiling. And that got the best click-through and conversion rate. Whatever reason, if you can associate like some sex appeal with a product, men will buy it. They'll just buy it in higher numbers. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense technically, but
it makes perfect sense.
But the ad itself didn't make any sense. It was about like, I think it was for one of my virtual reality product. Like there was investing in virtual reality, like technology. And yeah, it didn't have anything to do with women. It didn't have anything to do. This woman was just a pretty woman that we could put on an ad, unconnected to the headline, got huge click through and sold a bunch.
Yeah, I think it's at that identity level, right? Like you want to be the kind of person whose lifestyle involves talking to a lot of attractive people.
Yeah, that's probably right.
Because there is this reality that people who are very disciplined and high functioning tend to look after themselves, tend to make the time to exercise, tend to be disciplined about what they eat, and tend to be relatively better looking than they might otherwise be. And so if you hang around a lot of people who are diligent, hardworking, and successful, the proportion of those people who are relatively good looking is going to be maybe a little higher than the population at large. I think that's a fair statistical guess. And so then I think there becomes this instinctive thing that if I'm the kind of person who's going to be diligent and hardworking, successful, the lifestyle I associate with that is that I tend to be around some good looking people. And that's where I think just the sheer raw click on this ad because she's hot goes a little deeper into that identity level.
Yeah, I mean, you could also look at it from a evolutionary type lens where it's just what is the most likely thing to get me to, like, your subconscious evolutionary brain starts thinking, how do I propagate my genes? And then women and money are two ways that you have success in this world. So they're actually somewhat related, at least in the reptile brain. They get very closely related. So there might be something in that just base level of humanity too.
Got to imagine there is something to that.
So I wanted to go back. One thing you had asked me a little bit earlier was using the states of awareness and stages of sophistication in a freelancing context. One thing I would be very careful with if you're a freelancer is as far as like state of awareness, you don't want to go with somebody that doesn't know what freelancing is. You want to go with somebody that's used freelancers before. So they're either like a state 1 or 2, which is they know you, they want you, or a state 2. If that would be state 1. State 2 would be like they know what freelancers are, they just don't know if they want you yet, right? And then as far as the stage of sophistication, you can go with like 4 or 5. You can speak to their identity. I'm the type of person that hires this, like only the best, right? That's kind of who I work with now as people is I don't do anything that radically different. I just do it better. And they want to work with the best and most expensive. So that's kind of one way I deal with people. But then, the state 4 or stage 4 would be kind of your mechanism. What do you do that's different than other people? So that could be, your skill stack. I have this different way of doing things. I'm this type of person. I'm this is my unique thing that sets me apart. So that would be, again, you want to go with state 1, state 2 of awareness, and then stage 4 or 5 of sophistication. Just if you're looking at it that way, that's kind of where I'd align myself.
Yeah, so I'll throw out something else that I've been doing, and maybe this is a terrible idea, and I'm going to pick your brain about it. So I've been thinking about how I might start trying to attract a certain, like some kind of following, some kind of audience, start to have people kind of know kind of who I am and that I exist. And one of the things I've been thinking about is maybe doing a YouTube channel and putting out a bunch of content about just kind of, software engineering. So if you've got a software product, here's a bunch of just short things that I can tell you that you can implement to make your software business run better. If you're the business owner, ways that you can have your team be more productive, or if you're one of the engineers, how you can actually make your engineering work go better, and put out a bunch of that kind of content. And so the question for me is, A, is that a good idea in general? But B, then who am I mainly targeting? Do I want the business owner to be the primary audience of that? Or do I want people on the engineering team to be the audience of that and see that I kind of do know what I'm doing? And when it's time to hire a freelance, they'll go, hey, what about this guy? I've been watching his YouTube channel. I think he might be able to help us.
It's an interesting question. I don't know the software industry super well, but I can say from like the copywriting side, I've seen people do this where they put out a lot of how to, write emails, how to write headlines, how to write closes, and their channels almost entirely get newer copywriters, people that are trying to learn copywriting. And those are, God bless them, but they're not the people that you want to introduce you to clients, right? And I suspect you're probably going to have the same thing if you get into the how-to basic engineering problems, software problems. You're going to get people that are just trying to break into the industry. They have their first job. They're just starting out. They're like trying to solve a problem, or they're working on their own at home on some project. But I don't know if clients are going to be on, like, what are the problems clients are looking for on YouTube? Is it actually software related? Is it maybe you have to go bigger picture and you just say, well, here's my skill set, but here's a broader lesson that you can learn for running a business.
It's probably more business things and soft skills. How do I keep my team productive, and how do I get the business to make more money?
Yeah, maybe like managing a software team type thing would be good, because that's the thing is you're going to get much lower volume in that type of thing. But if you can niche it down to just the right person, if you, I don't know, talk to like go to somebody, your supervisor or boss, and say, like, can I see your search history when it comes to, I mean, don't get too personal, but like your YouTube, like when you're looking for things, what do you look for?
That's a good idea.
Like, yeah, what have you looked up?
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, and I think like there are some problems that I think are common to a lot of businesses and exist with software teams as well. Things like, how does your company culture need to shift once you go from 3 employees to 10 employees to 30 employees?
Yeah.
You need to have more structure in place at each of those levels. It can be very informal when there's only 3 of you. Once there's 30 of you, you need much more formal structures in place to keep things flowing. And how do you make that transition each step of the way? Stuff like that. That's really the manager's purview, stuff that they're wrestling with day to day.
Yeah, it's
that might be better content.
One of the first, not the first, but it was like 2015, 2016. I got invited to a mastermind to participate in a panel. And it was a bunch of people that all use copy, but they had no desire to understand anything about copywriting or marketing. They wanted to know, how do you manage a team of creatives? It was driving them crazy. Like, how do we keep these creative lunatics in line and actually like get their work in on time and like work together and stop being a prima donna and like telling me that the shade one color is off in this font, so you can't launch yet. Like, how do we get them all to work together? That was what they all cared about. And these are all like 7 and 8 figure business owners. They don't care at all about like what I could tell them about marketing. They might've hired me, but they didn't want to hire me. They wanted to know, how do I manage my freaking team? So yeah, you have to understand the problem that they're going through. And then kind of, if you can hone in on that, you'll get an audience of, you might only have an audience of 100 people, but it's 100 people that would hire you. So that's,
yeah, I'd rather have 100 people lining up to hire me than 10,000 people that aren't going to.
Exactly.
So, yeah, that's good. That's helpful lesson. That's going to be my takeaway for the day.
I'm curious to ask you. So you have 2 or 3 books out, right? You said 3 books out.
Yeah, one of them's free. One of them was meant to be kind of a lead magnet for an email list, but
okay.
And so it's not in print; it's digital only.
But you've actually you have 2 that you sell. I know, because I bought at least one of them for our first interview, which was a year ago now. What was it like? Because I know that's why you started like listening to marketing content. What was your marketing process like? What was thought process on how you were going to sell those books when you first were writing them?
So the one I'm almost certain you bought is Taxation and Slavery.
Yes.
Oh no, was it the crypto one? That was Taxation. Yeah. So I wrote
Oh,
this book called Taxation and Slavery.
I think I might have bought both of them.
Yeah, there you go. So I've written two books. One is called Taxation and Slavery. It's I did Bible college and I did all this stuff about Christianity and politics and why if you read the Bible as a Christian, you should end up coming out a libertarian. That's basically what that book's about. It's 400 pages. It's pretty heavy going. It's pretty academic. The avatar for that is pretty much someone who's like a really engaged intellectual or who's even like a Bible college student. I wanted to write a book that can be in the library at a theological college and everyone can reference in all their essays. That was the goal. And I thought that is not to make money off. That's a passion project. I just want it to exist in the world. It's the book that I wish had existed in the library when I started writing my thesis. Because I had to cobble this together from so many weird places. And I read all this like Catholic socialist stuff, just trying to get my head around it. And I needed all of this condensed. I wanted it to exist. But I didn't expect it to make any money. And later I read the two books, Ask and Choose by Ryan Levesque, who's a guy I heard on Tom Woods' show, and he had all this stuff about how to do an education business and how to market it. And I tried his whole process in a book called Choose, about how you choose a market you want to do an info product for. I did all the worksheets and tested all my stuff and did Google Trends and Amazon results and like what are people actually buying and try to find a niche with the right level of activity, that sort of sweet spot of not saturated, but there is people there. And decided investing in crypto stuff, that's the niche I want to go for. And so I wrote this book. I called it Crypto for Conservatives, even though I'm more of a libertarian than a conservative. I thought that's like an identity I want to go after. There's all these people that self-identify as conservatives. I'm going to try and grab that identity hook. And the weird thing for me was that after I did all that market research and tried to pitch it to this group of people, the crypto book totally bombed. I've sold 10 times as many copies of the academic tax book.
Just on the surface, Taxation and Slavery is 10 times better title. And half your sales on a book are going to be on the title if you're not doing heavy marketing. So and think about the audience of people that are getting taxed is way broader than the audience of people that are ever going to invest in crypto until they're forced to. So like, even though it's more academic, I think it is in books, people don't buy just one, right? Like how many books on I don't know, libertarianism have I bought? It's not just, I didn't just read Rothbard and then be like, oh, got it. It's like, you go down a rabbit hole and things on like taxes, investing, stuff like that. People can really go down a rabbit hole. So yeah, the Crypto for Conservatives, probably just, it's a younger audience, and Crypto for Conservatives sounds like it's for an older audience. That would be my guess as to why it didn't sell as well.
Yeah, in hindsight, I think that's a terrible title, but you live, you learn.
You could rebrand it.
I've been thinking about doing that, but not totally sure what's involved in the process. Release a second edition under a new title or something.
I don't know. Just you probably have to write a few new chapters when I don't know, if you sold less than like 1,000 copies, it won't matter. Like nobody's gonna be like, this sounds a lot like the last book I bought from him.
Maybe I need to reframe it entirely, because the thing was, it's about I was trying to be the intelligent investor, the Benjamin Graham book about how do you actually read a balance sheet and read all the financial statements of a company and decide whether it's a good company to invest in.
Yeah.
I wanted to do that for the crypto space. How do you really look at a cryptocurrency and decide, are the fundamentals there? And I wonder if maybe I'm just talking to the wrong crowd, and crypto people, they want charts and trading tips, and they want to know when to buy, when to sell, and not really worried about learning the fundamentals that deeply. Maybe that was my big mistake.
At this point, the crypto people that really deep dive in it end up either as like Bitcoin maxis, or they're down to the, Monero, Bitcoin. They're a very, very small portfolio of potential ones. Because if you look at the value of most of these coins, you're like, I can't ethically invest in that. It's most of them are Ponzi schemes.
Yeah, I think if you want to sell books, it seems like the way to go is to sell why you should be a Bitcoin maximalist. That's because Bitcoin maximalists will buy 20 of those books.
Yes. I mean, it's probably true.
Yeah, that's nothing against it. Like I'm all for the same reason libertarians will buy 20 books about libertarianism. It's a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's I don't know. I'm sure you have a theological library that's more than one interpretation of different books, right? There's not just like, yeah, exactly. It's not just like you bought the one book on Matthew and then the one book on Mark and the one like, right? You've probably dived deeper into some of these than just.
I don't know if people can read the things that are on the shelf behind me, but I inherited this culture from my dad of there is stuff on the shelf that I deeply disagree with, and that's important. And I want my kids to see that there is stuff on the shelf that's worth knowing, even if I deeply disagree with it. So I have I'm trying to see what's a good example. I have, books by Richard Dawkins. I have various atheists. I have that guy's straight up. That guy's a heretic. He said he's a Christian. He actually is a heretic. Uh, various things like that I will be careful showing to my children. But yes, that's I want to read broadly.
I got Karl Marx back here, so I'm not judging you for any of that.
I did read the Communist Manifesto during writing that Christianity and Politics thesis.
Have you gone through Das Kapital?
No, that was longer, and I only had so long to read and write.
I got the audiobook. It's very intellectual bullshit. Like, it's just like everybody's like, you don't really understand Marx until you've read Das Kapital. And I'm like, all right, I read it. He's still wrong. He's still extremely, extremely wrong. Anyway.
I remember reading Communist Manifesto, and there was this particular thing that I was like, you just misunderstood like basic supply and demand.
Yeah, it's the premises are so far off, but you got to understand because that is the foundation of a lot of people's belief system. You just have to understand how far off their premises are to understand the conclusions that they reach, or once they understand the premises, how evil they're being.
Yeah, that was I can't think where it might have been a Tom Woods comment or something saying about a person in theory could be a thoroughgoing Austrian economist and just want the world to burn, and therefore not believe in any of the freedom stuff, but they know how the market works and they just want the world to burn.
So speaking of heretics, you got kicked out of a church one time. Is that correct?
That is, essentially correct. There's lots of shades of gray, and I think technically on paper I left, but in practice it's more accurate to say I was fired.
All right, can you tell me that story, because we want to end this on a fun note of you getting kicked out of a church.
Yeah, so we have a thing called ministry apprenticeship here in Australia that I think is a really good thing. It's a good system where if you're thinking about being a pastor in a church, instead of going to seminary for 3 or 4 years and spending all your life savings or borrowing tens of thousands of dollars and getting in debt, instead of doing that, first spend 2 years as someone's apprentice on low pay, but you're being paid, and see the lifestyle and train under someone and get the hands-on experience. And if you decide you still want to do it, then do all the stuff of going to seminary. And if you decide you don't want to do it, well, you've learned some practical skills, you're not in debt, and you can go and use those practical skills in a good way and serve in a church somewhere. And so it was my second year of apprenticeship, and I got into a disagreement with the person I was apprenticing under. He took the position that everything we do as a church should be measured with hard numbers, and generally that meant attendance. So I was running a Bible study group on campus of the university, and it had 20 people in it. He said, look, by 6 months' time, we want it to be 40 people, not 20. And it got to 6 months later, and he said, hey, it's still at close to 20, not 40. This has been a failure, this thing, and you need to own that you have failed. And I'm thinking, I don't know if I think that's biblical. Jesus definitely said some things that turned people off, and they left him almost on purpose. Help me think through these issues. And I was kind of telling him, hey, I want you to, I'm trying to learn from you. I want you to persuade me, but have the conversation with me. Try and bring me around. I want to talk about it. And he said, no. We're not going to talk about it. This is about you submitting to my authority. And this was before I was self-conscious libertarian or anything like that. This is before I was even interested in anything with politics. So I hadn't learned some of these lessons, and I had to learn them the hard way. From there, I sort of thought, well, I can't just agree with you when I don't. I have these biblical objections to what you're saying, so I can't just go along with it. And yet you're not helping me overcome any of that. So it was just this impasse, and pretty much it got really ugly and personal. And they told me they thought I had a mental health problem, that I had to go. They sent me on involuntary leave. I had to get checked out by a doctor for mental health symptoms, which all came back clean for the record. But they told me they thought I had something called oppositional defiance disorder, which I thought, if you're going to have a mental disorder, that sounds like the most badass one to have. I'll take that. But yeah, so that it just got ugly and personal. And eventually, they told me I shouldn't go looking to be in the ministry, that I wasn't mature enough as a person. And if I applied to a seminary, that they would write them a letter and tell them not to accept me as a student.
Wow.
Real ugly, real personal. So I left there and I deliberately crossed the state line, came up to Queensland, because the way that stuff's structured in Australia, the church denominations, they kind of operate within the states. So by crossing the state border, I'm kind of into a different scene, different denominational structure, just start over. And yeah, I've been here ever since then, and kind of just, I had to start life over, because the thing about that church was that, like a lot of churches, it had become my whole community. So it was my friendship circle. It was where I worked. It was the biggest part of my network. And suddenly I'm just blackballed. I'm on the out. Like, people did not call me to ask what had happened, which, I think is because there's sort of this unspoken sense in those kind of scenes that don't get mixed up with that guy who's gone, because you might then be gone.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to have that happen to you. So yeah, it was ugly. And it took me a long time to get over. I did end up seeing a counselor about it. That taught me that said that I did one session with a counselor and talked it through. That has stuck with me ever since, because it taught me just some things about how the world works and about politics that have stuck with me ever since. So I asked the counselor, do I have a moral obligation to go back there and kick up a stink? Because I left relatively quietly. I didn't kick up a stink before I left, because I thought it was a big church, thousands of people. And I thought there was a lot of great people here doing a lot of great stuff, loving each other, reaching out to the community, doing all these good things. There's bad apples in the leadership, but the church as a whole is doing lots of great stuff. And I don't want to disrupt that. I think if I stay and kick up a stink, I'll just create this division between people that's counterproductive. I think the best thing I can do is just be gone. So I did that, but I asked him, this particular counselor I saw, do I have a moral obligation to go back there and kick up a stink and try to prevent what happened to me happening to someone else? And he told me, you can do that. There's no moral reason why you shouldn't, but be prepared for the fact that you will fail. It will not work. This is a multi-thousand person organization, and these people sit at the top of it. The reason they sit at the top of this very authoritarian structure, because just the culture of it, way more than where I am now, was just everyone knows who they answer to and who answers to them. It was this very top-down hierarchical kind of culture. It says the reason these people sit at the top of that structure is because they are, quote, practiced narcissistic bastards. They know how to work the angles. They know how to come out on top in that sort of conflict. So if you feel compelled to do it, that's an option open to you. But go in knowing that it probably won't work.
I'm curious. So I've left like organized churches. I haven't gone to an organized church since I was like 24 or something like that. And I grew up going to smaller churches, not small, but like maybe 200, maybe 300 people, 200 people, something like that. And even there's the hierarchy of the deacons, and then the elders know what they're doing and that they will not be questioned in some of these churches. And then the last one I went to was, I don't know, maybe 1,000 people. And it was stiffer and weirder. And I mean, there was some great people there, but I just got like, my whole experience with churches just turned me off, because the people at the top seem to be such hypocrites. They don't seem to be Christian in any like way that you'd really recognize. They seem to be enjoying like their little kingdoms. So I don't know. Does the size of the church matter? Because I know my dad is involved in a smaller church that he helped co-found at this point. But it's much smaller than any of those big organized things. But probably, I don't know, maybe he's the authoritarian at the top. I kind of doubt it, because he's my dad. But I don't know. Does the size of the church make a difference? Is too large of an organization always susceptible to corruptibility? Like, you look at the Catholic Church, and even if some of their theological arguments were sound, would it be inevitably corrupt just because of the size and wealth of it?
Yeah, I think there's definitely something to that. The size of a church definitely changes the culture of it, and it's got pros and cons. So I think that's the same of like a bigger church has more resources. There's an economy of scale to certain things that you want to do. A church of 100 people struggles to run, to build a school or run a soup kitchen or something, just because of how much volunteer effort you need and cash and stuff. Bigger churches can handle that. So there's definitely big upside to that. But the downside is that there is power there for the taking, and power-hungry people will seek it out. And so this is the same. This is the application of this for me to politics was people who end up at the top of the political structure are people who know how to work that system. That's what they're selected for. People, the reason that a party is in power or a person is president, the one thing that they are definitely good at, almost by definition, is propaganda. That's how they get there.
Yeah.
So it shouldn't be a surprise when they propagandize you. That's what it takes to get there. And so that's what they must be good at.
So decentralize the church, decentralize the state.
I'll tell you a positive story. So when I came to Queensland, I looked at a few churches here in Southeast Queensland on the Gold Coast. I had friends at a few different churches in this city. So I went and checked out where they were. And I met a guy, because I'm telling a really positive story rather than a negative one. I'll name this guy. I met a guy named Russ, who was at the time, the assistant pastor at the church I started going to here. And when I got there, I asked him, okay, I'm new in town. I have some experience with, like, I've been in ministry, like I have maybe something to offer, and maybe I can help out with some things, but I'm looking for a church to call home. And other than here, like, where else should I check out? And he lit up. He went, oh, okay, cool. You should check out this place and that place. I know the guy over there. They're doing some great stuff. Definitely look over there. There's some great options. And I'm going, this guy is about building the kingdom of Jesus, not my own little fiefdom, my own little corner of it where I'm the king. He's about the big picture and loving people and helping them. And if that means me going somewhere else, that's totally fine. So I'm staying right here. This is who I want to hang around. That was a really positive thing for me, because I think where I'd come out of, or I got kicked out of, it was totally the opposite. It was, oh man, I think I'm cautious. I'm cautious of how much I talk about this in public, even now, for some reason. There was conflict between the church, the staff at the church, and the staff of this other, what's called a parachurch ministry. So it's not a church, but they were doing things tied up with the university. And the parachurch that was for university students, that had been running a camp in the winter holidays every year. It was like long-standing tradition over a decade. And the staff of the church decided, we want to have our church camp in the winter, and we can't possibly have it any other time than overlapping largely with their camp. And so there's a lot of people who are in both, who are in the uni student group and also at the church. We're forcing them to sort of pick an allegiance. Like, it really was like, you need to spend less time doing stuff with them and more time doing stuff with us. Here, the church, this is what matters. The local, there was theological stuff around why they said that too. Knox Robinson ecclesiology, if there's theology nerds out there, and that fed into the church is what matters. Anything that's not the local physical gathered church doesn't matter nearly as much. So you have to, don't invest time over there. You should be investing most of your volunteer time with us and what we're doing. Then I came up to Queensland. It was like, no, there's great stuff over there and there and there. If you want to do that, God bless you. We'll help you if we can. It was just complete 180 of attitude. I thought this is a heaps better place to be.
Yeah, there's better communities in every organization, or every larger group can be broken down into good communities and crappy communities. You can see this in libertarians in the US. You can see it in basically every group. Christians, Catholics, there's great Catholic groups out there. And then there's, the Pope. So, all right, man, we've been going for about an hour. I didn't expect it to get so churchy, but I think it was kind of interesting anyway. So we're going to leave it in. Any closing thoughts you got for us?
No, not really. I'm just, glad to put that out there. Gives people a sense of, who I am, who you are, where we've come from. That's, interesting to know. Helps people know what's going on. We want people to know us and like us and trust us, right? And that's part of that is just sharing the background.
And there it is.
So I guess the other thing is, there is the chance that there's someone out there who's in that situation, who's been in a church that's not treated them well and kicked them around, and they're spiraling and not sure what to do. And if that's you, it is okay. Reach out, send me an email. I can help. I've been there. It's a hard place to be. You feel like no one understands. There are other people who've been where you are. So yeah, I'll put that out there just in case there is someone who's actually really in the thick of that right now.
What email address should they use?
They can reach me. My handle for most social media stuff goes back to when I was 16 and I thought it was cool. It's Fatal Glory, and you can reach me fatalglory@gmail.com.
All right. We'll put that out there. Everybody else, until next time, stay free.